Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate, they write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team.
Welcome to Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, a podcast that serves as your backstage pass to an uplifting and positive view into the collaborative playbook of higher education presidents and their senior leaders. I'm your host, Dr. Bryan Gross. Join me weekly for discussions with some of the best minds in higher education leadership, from presidents to provosts, enrollment managers to CFOs, CIOs to chief diversity officers. This show is your ticket to the most future-forward strategies that are impacting real results on college campuses today. Each week, I will be posting highlights and insights from our show, so let's connect. Visionary Voices is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. All right, audience, welcome to a very special episode of Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook. And in this episode, we're going to say in the heart of Silicon Valley, I'm so pleased to have two very special guests with me today. We have the president of San Francisco Bay University, President Nick Ladany, and we have Heather Herrera, who's the vice president for strategy and innovation. Nick and Heather, thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you, Bryan.
Well, I want to dive right in. I was so inspired to hear about this brand new initiative that you're about to launch at San Francisco Bay University called the Center for Empowerment and Pedagogical Innovation. So, President Ladany, can you start by sharing the vision behind the center?
Absolutely. Well, one of the dirty little secrets in higher education is that, by and large, probably over 99% of faculty across the world, certainly in the US, have never been trained in how to teach. There is no other industry, institution, employment group. You can't even imagine hiring people, your primary workforce, without the skills to do the job you want them to do. But for a number of reasons, it's happened in higher education. So I think some of this comes out of years of experience of watching faculty who are very good at teaching, outstanding teachers, and those that are awful. And to some extent, my sense is it's about a third of faculty are outstanding, a third are perhaps benign, and a third are frankly incompetent. And largely the problem is that we have processes, tenure-based largely, but not only, processes that keep faculty teaching students who aren't trained in how to teach, who don't understand pedagogy. And so this center is part of our differentiation as a university. We think of ourselves as a challenger brand. We're reimagining higher education across a number of different realms. And one of those key realms is faculty development. We expect our faculty to teach. We're going to coach them up. We're going to help them understand pedagogy in ways that they probably have never seen before, and integrate current methodologies, current things that are happening in our environment. We were just talking about AI earlier at a town hall. How do faculty integrate AI into their own experience of learning, but also with their students? So I think that, and Heather can talk a lot more about some of the things that are happening specifically in CEPI, but I just say the impetus for this was really our sense that faculty don't have really a clue on how to teach. And largely faculty learn by the seat of their pants, by their own experiences. Those that are really committed tend to do better. But I will end with this. Early in my career, I taught at a Research One institution, and my designated faculty mentor, I was a new faculty member, my designated faculty mentor said to me, teach well enough not to embarrass yourself. And basically that's, I tend to work well from low expectations, but even that is pretty low as an expectation. But that's not surprising. Many universities, especially large research-based universities, we don't expect faculty to teach well. It's not part of their evaluation. It's not part of how we rate them, and it's not how we give them raises. So they end up not caring about it, which is why at these large institutions, they teach so poorly.
This is such an important topic. I think our audience is just going to eat this up. I think we already have people on the edge of their seats, across disciplines. And it's funny, I was in higher ed for maybe 10 or 15 years. And then I met my wife, and now I happen to be married to a full-time faculty member who I think is one of those 1/3 that are just amazing teachers. I have to go on record by saying that. We've had so many discussions about how you bring a faculty along and how you help those faculty who may not be as strong in that area. So Dr. Herrera, I'd like to switch over to you. It seems like as the Vice President for Strategy and Innovation, you have the big task of approaching the faculty with the design and the development of the center. So can you talk a little bit about the strategic goals that are at the heart of the work that you've done to try to launch the center?
Absolutely. First, thank you for having me. It's a great opportunity for us to share the vision of SFBU and what we're trying to do. And it all ties back to our values around equity and access. And so one of the things that Nick's talked about around faculty not being able to teach or not being given skills or encouragement to grow in that area, when your primary responsibility you're not prepared to deliver on. It's troubling because we can't think of another industry where you fail 50% of your constituents. Can you imagine if the banking industry just lost 50% of everybody who opened an account? But there's no other industry out there where they have such high rates of failure and they don't ask why. And so this was that opportunity for us to say, we will do this differently because we are so committed to access and inclusion. And when you think about the number of students who leave an institution without a degree, if you disaggregate that, and you're going to see more low-income students, more students of color. I mean, I worked in New York, and I know that the city university system at one point had an 80% attrition rate, and they were allowed to do that for decades. And so, the vision that Dr. Ladany had was that we would not be that kind of an institution. And so that is where we started. That's the basis for starting a Center for Empowerment and Pedagogical Innovation. And the design is premised on 6 pillars. So we have a framework from which we operate out of, and it's called the Student Experience Pillars. And it's a hexagon. We've created a visual representation of it. And if you can imagine, just visualize a hexagon with 6 segments with the student at the center of the pillars. And so here's our framework. We have academics as one of those pillars, but it's only one, and it's of no greater importance than anything else. So it's academics, it's life literacy, it's wellness, it's multiple meaningful relationships, it's financial support, and it's career mobility. And so those 6 pillars are the basic framework for everything that the institution does, including how we prepare faculty to be faculty. We think that each of these pillars is what supports a student in their long-term success, so that we're not one of those institutions with, an 80% attrition problem or even a 50% attrition problem. We want to hold ourselves to a higher standard. And within each of those pillars, there are principles that operate. So for example, under academics, what we're prioritizing is a philosophy of think, do, create. So the curriculum, we don't want the sage on the stage model anymore. We don't want someone who comes in once a week and lectures for 3 hours and is indifferent to whether or not people are learning anything or if it's an enduring knowledge that's happening. So yes, there is a certain amount of theory and a certain amount of didactic exchange, but really it's a lot of active learning. And that's where the doing comes in. So we have a huge variety of learning experiences that we specifically train students on, everything from, small group work to projects to, digital storytelling to just a massive array of different learning experiences we encourage them to use. And then we have them create opportunities where students are actually applying what they're learning. So there isn't just one major signature assignment at the end of the semester upon which all their, the final grade rests on. They're doing things along the way. And then they do synthesize everything they've learned and they create an original project or assignment that demonstrates what they have learned over the semester. Another principle that's important to us is formative assessment. So no longer is it just the midterm and the final, and that's what determines your grade. It's more low stakes, low consequence, formative assessment. And one of the things that we're practicing is intelligent failure. Students have a tremendous amount of anxiety, and we're trying to mitigate that by saying you learn by your mistakes and making it a safe space for them to experiment and ideate and then revise and refine. And because that's actually the 21st century that we live in now. And that's part of what went into the design of our undergraduate core curriculum is really, what is it that you need to be successful? And so when we talk about the pillars, we talk about career mobility, we're not just talking about, graduating someone who knows how to code and then will go off into a cubicle and code all day. We're talking about creating a mindset that will make somebody successful as a team player, as a leader, as a manager, somebody who's agile, who can easily be upskilled because they have a growth mindset, and so that they can be contributing to the long-term success and effectiveness of their organization and grow. So that's why we chose career mobility, because we want to give people the kinds of skills that will allow them to grow and adapt, because that's the world that we live in now. It's constantly evolving and changing.
This is amazing. I mean, so much there that, I'm like frantically taking notes just to unpack for the audience. I think this idea that you started, these high failure rates and not asking why, we in higher education will look at metrics, 74% retention rate. Well, let's bring it to 76. Does that mean that, we're still okay with 24% of our students, dropping out? So I love that. I loved hearing about your intentional framework, and the 6 pillars, and then this think, do, create, idea of allowing faculty to do experimentation. And I'm really glad you mentioned the growth mindset piece at the end, because I noticed that growth mindset is a part of your core curriculum, which really kind of ties together. I guess my question is, thinking about the audience must be wondering, how do you get faculty to kind of come on board with this? I might imagine, we talk a lot about collaboration on this show and what are the obstacles for collaboration. What are some challenges that you might have faced when you introduced this concept initially? And how did you go about overcoming them to get faculty on board with this?
Well, we're just launching the center. We hired an extraordinary academic from Habib University in Pakistan. His name is Dr. Anzar Khalik. And he started a similar center and ran very successfully. And so he's only just started with us. We've hired our brand new faculty. We started training last week with them. And I'm going to tell you, they're stunned in a way. When we just went through some of the basic principles, the terminology, at the end of the day, we asked them for some feedback, and they said, this is the first time we've heard some of these terms. So for me, it's affirmation that we're on the right path, that we're not just putting untrained people in front of students and letting students be the collateral damage of us not planning more wisely. And so the new faculty that we're training are grateful that someone is investing in their professional development. Mm-hmm. But it's not something that they were really aware of, honestly. Their mindset has been like, I'm a subject matter expert. All I need to do is know my subject matter. And this is where there's a breakdown. And I come from a background in teacher preparation. So I worked in teacher preparation for a very long time, and I'm very familiar with what's required to get a teaching credential and what you have to demonstrate as being an effective teacher before you're allowed to take over a classroom. We don't do that in higher education.
Yeah. And one of the things that's important to add to that, I think, is that we are a startup university. So we are hiring new faculty. We don't have to worry about tenure. Faculty come here and part of their expectation is to teach 9 courses per year. They have to teach year round, including the summer, because we believe students deserve that. But I will also say I took a bit of a poke at faculty. What I will say about faculty nationally is they're underpaid.
Yeah.
So we are paying faculty top dollar. We're paying our professors of practice, which is what we call our faculty. We are paying them more than they would get paid at any other university to start.
And we cap classes at 20 students.
And thank you for that. We cap classes at 20 students. So there's a real incentive to bring faculty here who want to learn how to teach, who are committed to teaching, who know that we have their back. And it's quite exciting because that they're co-creating some of this with us, which also helps the process.
Hey, it's Mallory. Element 451 is hosting the AI Engage Summit on October 29th and 30th. This free virtual event brings together leaders, innovators, and many of your favorite Enrollify creators to explore AI's impact on student engagement, enrollment marketing, and institutional success. We're packing the schedule with real examples and case studies, so you leave knowing how to harness AI to drive meaningful change at your institution. Whether you're looking to enhance student outcomes, optimize enrollment marketing, or simply stay ahead of the curve, the AI Engage Summit is your gateway to the next level of higher education innovation. Registration is free. Visit element451.com to save your spot. Now, back to the show.
This makes so much sense in hearing this, your sense of being a startup university, but, paying top dollar, thinking about loads. I was so impressed. The center's name includes this idea of empowerment, which is very powerful if you're going to kind of take this on. And, I thought a lot as I was preparing for this conversation, how do you prepare any professional to take ownership of their own professional growth and innovation? That to me is so, so exciting. And whether you're talking about faculty or admissions counselors or people working in a student success, talk to me about the conversations that you have around your campus about encouraging people to take ownership over their own professional growth and innovation.
I'm so happy you asked that question because it's an opportunity for us to talk about the core curriculum and the competencies. So the core curriculum it's basically our promise statement to students. If you come to SFBU, there are identities that we are going to help you create. And they are all based on the research we've done on what industry is looking for in employers of the 21st century. And so they are things like tenacious leader, interpersonally gifted, global navigator, tech trendsetter, enlightened thinker. And each one of those identities is tied to specific competencies. So to be a tenacious leader means that you're going to develop the competencies of a growth mindset, creative problem solving, or productive optimism. And then we went a layer further because it's not enough just to say that you have the competency of growth mindset, but we need to be able to have outcomes we can measure. And so we developed behavioral indicators. And so there are specific things that will demonstrate that you have a growth mindset. So for instance, are you seeking constructive feedback to improve your performance on your projects and your assignments? So this is what is the nuts and bolts of the undergraduate core curriculum. And we've also taken that and we are applying it to the faculty. So we're asking the faculty, are you also a tenacious leader? Do you have the competencies of a growth mindset, a creative problem solving, productive optimism? And we're going to measure through assessment how students perceive you and how you perceive yourself and how, the head of your unit perceives you. And so we'll have this ongoing feedback loop where we can start to see, is this all taking root in there? And that is where the empowerment is going to come in, because you hold yourself accountable for this. And there's a lot of co-construction with the fact that we now have pillars from which to work from. We have a basic roadmap. We have a very strong strategic plan. And ultimately, whether or not you continue with SFBU is going to be predicated on how well you operationalize all of these different facets that we've put in place, primarily, though, of course, like I said, the identities and the competencies.
This is amazing. This is an episode that I hope our viewers are taking notes. I think they're going to have to rewind and listen again, because you're really laying out quite a roadmap for being innovative and thinking differently about faculty teaching for the sake of students.
And I think we are intentional in what we're doing, which is also exciting. I would say that all universities do this to some extent, but not intentionally. Mm-hmm. So universities would, counter to what we're doing here. You're going to see universities that develop the disgruntled narcissist, mm-hmm. the absent careerist, the unresponsive leader. Those are the kinds of things that universities do already. What we're saying is these are just not good competencies. These are not effective competencies as we move forward.
Yes. I think we've all run across a couple unproductive narcissists in our time in higher ed. President Ladany, I know how important the local community is. And as I started the show, you're in the heart of Silicon Valley. So talk to me a little bit about, your vision, not only for the center, but some of the other innovative things you're doing and how you're hoping to see that kind of benefit the community in the Silicon Valley area.
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. I think a few things I would say that makes us a bit different. I mean, Heather talked about the 20 students per classroom. Mm-hmm. Our annual tuition is $8,000 for us a year for students. So we're at a very low price point, but we also are going to be financially sustainable over time. A startup, it takes a little while, but the low tuition can happen. Universities are choosing not to use effective business models. And that's a real huge problem for universities. For us, it's not such a problem. We've redefined what a higher ed business model looks like. I would say that there's an article that's going to come out hopefully next week in Forbes. We're now looking to be thought and action leaders as a leadership team. I'm putting out an article that essentially talks about how only in college does 4 = 6. And this is something you alluded to earlier, which is, when did it occur that 4-year colleges could use a 6-year graduation rate as an appropriate metric?
Right. Totally.
4-year colleges, we should be held accountable to a 4-year metric. And there is a history, and I write about this in this article, but basically the idea is stop it. And now we're moving to, I've heard there's some data out there about 8-year graduation rates. That's unacceptable. That's awful. And if you look, there are many universities that 4-year graduation rates are S, maybe a D, maybe a C. If you think of the typical 100% scale, that's what we should all be held accountable for. And we often put it on the student rather than ourselves. So for us, It's about us. What are we not doing? And sometimes that means, a common response to that is, well, the student's not motivated, or are you telling us to lower your rigor, lower your expectations? And I'm saying, no, to the contrary, increase your expectations and expect your students will meet those expectations and help guide them to those expectations. If students fail, the biggest onus is on us as educators. And that's the mindset we're creating here. Now, related to partnerships, we're doing things with different groups such as Junior Achievement. We're linking with them in a formal way because we think those students could benefit from what we're offering. And I will say this, a lot of universities, we don't have athletics at our university. Mm-hmm. We believe in wellness. We believe in physical fitness. We do want that. But athletics is a huge money sink for almost all universities. And there's a game the universities play. Well, we need student athletes in order to get students here. Well, yes, but no one's talking about all the money that's cost for athletic fields, for coaches, and all the rest. what we're saying is instead of spending on athletics, spend it on all students. So all students can get that concierge service. So one of the things Heather mentioned earlier that's critical for us is the idea of multiple meaningful relationships. So our students get relationships with their faculty, with their staff, with administrators, that's a real big part of our culture is to say, we're going to take care of these students and we're going to make sure that they're successful. And a big push will be to get them jobs in the community or go to grad school. That should be the outcomes. We're only going to have about a half dozen majors. Right now, we only have 3. Yeah. Next year, we're adding psychology. So you don't need 60 majors at a university. You want to know where universities are wasting money? Just look at their business model. Look at their majors. Look at what they're doing with faculty. Look at what they're doing with staff and administrators. It doesn't make sense. And so what we try to say, or what I'm trying to say is to boards in particular, boards tend to have, some great business minds on them. Apply those business models to higher education. We're a nonprofit. Most of us are nonprofits. We are in service of the community. That's okay. But there's ways to do it that are fiscally prudent and fiscally sound. And frankly, that's why we see one college closing a week these days is because people can't get their head around changing what they do. That medieval approach to education in the 21st century doesn't work. So I think I answered your question, but I hope if you had more, I'm happy to answer.
No, and then some. I think there are going to be so many people who are going to be inspired and have questions, and your energy and your enthusiasm and your genuine nature just jump off of the screen. So this is incredible. So as we kind of wrap up, there's all these leaders. There's going to be presidents and provosts listening to this. There's going to be future leaders, maybe just entry level or mid-level leaders. And one similar question would be, what advice would you give to anyone in higher ed who wants to kind of take some of your clear thinking and your energy and apply it to maybe a more traditional model at their college and university? Where would you start? What kind of advice would you give to another leader listening to this?
Sure, that's a great question. Well, I will tell you that our new motto, our new slogan is there's no stopping us. So if you're a student, there's no stopping me from graduating. If you're a faculty member, there's no stopping me from being empathic toward one of my students. All of this is about being fearless.
Yeah.
And I would say leaders need to be less afraid. Right now in higher education, it became easy to be a status quo leader, which basically works if you have a lot of money. Yeah. If a university with a huge endowment, you can be status quo. You can do, I've been on budget meetings where, how do we cut costs? So instead of putting flowers around one of the signs on campus, we'll put it on the front end of the sign and we can save $50,000 a year. Well, if you're worried about, the number of flowers you put around a sign, you're probably okay financially and can do a lot of different things. Whereas, if you look at most universities, they're not in that position. So I think leaders need to be fearless. They need to let their boards know that there's going to be changes. They need to be able to confront faculty effectively, but also engage faculty in a process of change. Yeah. And, we can't be afraid of, everyone says, well, I'm not going to do this because we've always done it. And I personally have known faculty say, well, we'll just wait till this leader leaves and we'll keep doing what we're doing. But there has to be consequences of substance in higher education, both good and bad. It's this idea, if you're doing really well, those are the people we should be reinforcing and providing funds to. If you're just there to be difficult or not change, then maybe they shouldn't be in that position. We don't have time to ruin another generation of college students. A 50% graduation rate is awful. Frankly, if you're under 50%, I think you should give money back to the students. That you need to say, hey, there's got to be some kind of money back guarantee for college administrators. I think that would change things. I mean, how do we change and shape things? So I would just go back to that idea of being fearless, being okay with pushing things forward, not being afraid to have the difficult conversations, and not accepting, this entrenched view as the only way to go. I think you can do it. And there's a lot of things I've learned in the past around strategic planning and how to gain voice. But sometimes strategic planning, for example, becomes everyone has to agree. No, most have to agree with most. You get most to agree with most. I've been working with faculty, who are really entrenched, and, I've seen 80, 90% endorsement of a strategic plan because everyone had somewhat of a voice, and you teach people how to be involved. And I think that's what we do here. I would say, I don't mean to go off track, and you may end up not using this, but I will.
I'll go off track. I probably will.
But, I think this whole anti-DEI movement, for example, is an anti-intellectual movement. And colleges have let folks get away with that. I mean, think about the idea of an anti-DEI. That means you're for homogeneity, inequity, and exclusion.
Yeah.
Well, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
And so what leaders need to do is say, that is nonsense. That's anti-intellectual. Don't let people who are anti-intellectual influence what we do. And so to me, that whole DEI thing is a proxy for what we do in higher education. Be intellectual, be scientists. We were talking about faculty earlier in teaching. Faculty are terrific scientists by and large, but it's so ironic that they don't apply those scientific principles to their teaching.
Yeah.
How could you not apply? How could you not look at your evaluations? How could you not find evaluation tools and training tools that allow you to be a better teacher? Be a scientist. And so I think, in that leadership and be unafraid, put it out there. And what I've learned over time is if you're principled and you have integrity, the people show themselves for who they are. When they're not caring, when they want to be cruel in higher ed, when they want whatever they want to be, that pathology emerges in ways that is unproductive, and others do come around and don't tolerate it. So be fearless.
I love it. Well, that's a great transition. I have a couple guesses based on that answer of how you might answer this last question. But every episode we end by asking our guests to select a song or two that you might like to add to our Visionary Voices Spotify playlist. So I'd love to ask you to select a song that best exemplifies the spirit and energy of San Francisco Bay University or your leadership team that you'd like to add to our list.
Heather, I'll let you go first. I'm looking up. I do want to give him a good one here.
in keeping with our new motto, I was thinking of the Beastie Boys, no stopping till Brooklyn.
Love it. No sleep till Brooklyn. That's great. And how about you, Nick? You have a song you want to add to the list?
I do. Can I get another second to find what I'm looking for?
Yeah, you could.
While Nick's looking, I will say one of the things that Nick will talk about is that we're doing things that no other university is doing. And he's right, but it's not because they can't.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of something that a mentor of mine, Pedro Noguera, used to say, which is that anything is possible if you have political will. And that is what we have. And that is what I would say to other leaders, is to really think about what is your goal and your aspirations. It was very clear to me what our mission and our values were, and that we had the political will to execute on them. And, we are in a very good financial position, but we're not in the same position as Harvard or Stanford or Santa Clara, which is down the road from us. Santa Clara University has $1 billion endowment, and they are not doing a fraction. And no disrespect to them, but they're not doing a fraction of the things that we are trying to do for our students. And we only have a quarter of the amount of money that they have. Yeah. But we're able to do what we're doing because we have the political will to do it. Mm-hmm. We just welcomed the Startup Scholars Program, which is one of our signature programs. It's free tuition, free housing, and $10,000 towards your passion project. And we had 16 of those students start with us this week. And we are subsidizing all of that through our resources that we have, because it serves our mission to do that. And when you are very clear on what your mission is, you find the political will to execute it.
Yeah, I always say we're a bipartisan love child. We're both accessible and affordable.
I love that.
So I've got my song for you. So I'm a huge fan of 70s music. That's what I grew up with. So my favorite group is Styx. And the song I want you to share, you just came out a couple of years ago. It's called Our Wonderful Lives.
Oh, great.
And it's really reflective of the optimism, the joy that comes from, in my case, I apply it to higher education, but this idea that we find, even with dark clouds, this opportunity to grow and move forward.
I love that. What a great way to end. I can't thank the two of you enough. I think this is one of my most fun and inspirational interviews that I've done to date. So I can't thank you enough for your time, and strongly encourage our listeners to check out San Francisco Bay University and all the amazing things that are happening there. Thank you so much, President Ladany, Dr. Herrera. Until next time.
Visionary Voices, the College President's Playbook, is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admission professionals find their next big ideas and feature a huge selection of the industry's best. As your hosts, learn from Artis Cadu, Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, and so many more of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.